This is episode 214 of Dad Awesome. I'm so thankful you guys are joining us today. My name is Jeff Zog, and my guest today is none other than Bob Goff. So many of you have read his books. He's got a handful of books on the New York Times bestseller list. My daughters read his kids' books. He wrote some of those books with his daughter, and so grateful for the ways he's encouraged me. I called Bob the day after I quit my job to go full-time with Dad Awesome. I was like, well, I did it. I'm dreaming big here. Can you help me out? And he picked up the phone. I just called the number on the back of his book, and he picked up and said, go after it, take lots of notes. God's gonna use you. So I'm so grateful, guys, that you're joining us this week. This conversation is rich with practical and huge go after it wisdom. So this is episode 214, my conversation with Bob Goff. Bob, thank you for taking some time to chat.
You bet. This is a treat. Just great to be in your blast radius again.
Well, we're here with the RV in Southern California, and you taking some time to talk intentional fatherhood on the Dad Awesome podcast. It's a gift to me. It's a gift to all the dads, a part of our community.
No, it's fun to see your whole family out there and meet the posse.
They wanted to go down your water slide, actually, here at the Oaks. They're like, can we go down the water slide? I was like, next visit. Next visit.
Time. We'll let it warm up just a little bit.
Exactly.
I think that they would be plenty awake when they hit the water.
Because it's December here now, yeah. So I thought we could start with talking about an adventure I went on yesterday. I was a little a little north of La Jolla in the tide pools, low tide pools. There's families all over the place looking for these little treasures in these tide pools because, again, the ocean's all the way down. I think fatherhood, I want to leave behind treasures for my kids, for my grandkids, like that curiosity that I saw with my daughters and with other families. I was curious from your perspective, what can we be doing where can we be adding intentionality to our fatherhood journey that would be like those tide pools, leaving treasures behind that would even last beyond our kids?
Yeah, I think what we can constantly do, the first thought I had is context, that you can, just that idea of pausing to say the tide comes in, the tide goes out. It leaves things to be curious about, like this life of adventure that you're leading into. There have been 107 billion people that have lived here on Earth, give or take a couple.
Yep.
And there's just under 8 billion that are alive right now. So it means there's 15 people who aren't here for every one that is here. And so what if you say, I want to leave something behind? Because I don't know anything about the 15 people that aren't here anymore. Sure. And so during this little bit of time, to just have your family aware of context, to realize this is a time with your young kids that won't be replicated again. Yeah. And so getting the context for like that day at the beach, it isn't like kind of that and checking emails. It's just like give context. You're only here. It's wanting to be these memories that they're going to drop into a relatively small box of mental pictures they'll have of what it felt like to be raised in your family. Yeah. And so super intentional about that, but curious and always looking for context to say the winter is starting to happen here at the Oaks. And so to understand the context of what's happening, like to have our grandkids even understand that there's cows and horses that are going to be parents of other cows and horses. And so to understand the context, like you have a farm and there's more animals, to understand that before it rains on Thursday, Opa is going to go plow the field today to make sure that it's ready, because you don't want to disturb the field after it rains. You want the hay to grow.
What would be some examples of weekly or monthly, if you can think back to even when you had your kids were younger, of ways to like trigger or remember to think context? Any ideas on how we could like actually add some practical benchmarks to help us pan out?
Yeah, here's just a practical thing that wasn't around when you and I were the age of your kids, is the ability to just take photographs and images and capture this image of the cow that's going to have a baby and like include them in that constantly. We have talked before, we do this geocaching. We geocache things everywhere. So everywhere I go, we're starting a school in Bethlehem for Palestinian kids in January 13th. And so when I go there, I'll just bury something, which will be awesome. Yeah. And so stapled to the back of my will is all the latitude and longitude of everything I've buried around the world for our kids. So when I go missing, like capital M, we're going to like just have this grand adventure that they do. to celebrate that. I'll get 3 tickets, and for all the people they're married to and whoever they make, and just say, what if you go on this trip and find all the stuff I left behind?
So instead of just looking for deposits in the present, you're actually jarring up those deposits for the future.
Yeah, you actually know where you're going to be. You can open up bank accounts. I did that for my kids when they were young. I put little bits and pieces of money in there. I thought, well, when it's time to go to college, instead of taking out a loan, maybe there'd be enough in there. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then when they got to the age of going to college, I had a job, so I just paid for it. And then when they graduated, I never told them. Yeah. And then when they graduated, I'm like, oh, dude, congratulations. Oh, and here's this little something to help get a bad condo.
Sure, to get them started.
Or just like a little starter kit. And it all was born out of having an idea and then keeping it a secret, not making a big deal about it. Yeah. I make little videos for my kids, and so they don't know about that either. And so to store up these things that in anticipation is just going to blow their minds.
Yes. I know you love the movie The Incredibles.
Yes.
And who's the mom, the wife, Edna, am I right?
Edna, she was the one that said no capes.
No capes. And that's where I wanted to head with this is it's easy for us to try to do things and our kids spot us now or our spouse spots us now or other people say, that's awesome. It's another thing to say, let's do it secretly. Yeah. Would you tell that story? Kind of what you took away from that movie?
The whole idea, I was thinking about that movie, The Incredibles, and as these guys, the story plot, they're trying to be superheroes, and they said, "Oh, we need a uniform," and so the next section of the movie is them trying on different uniforms, and they really wanted one that had a cape, and so Edna's role was kept saying no capes, and so that idea to just not make a big deal about these things. And they had all these horror stories of to back up her of all these superheroes that got their capes stuck in something and it didn't turn out well. So there's some rationale behind living a no capes kind of life to not make a big deal about it. If faith is important to somebody listening, then Jesus talked about that. If you stand on the street corner and make a big deal about it, then you get a little golf clap here. But if you just don't go live a no capes kind of life, then you get to talk to Jesus about it forever, which is really a problem for a guy like me who writes books and speaks, because I talk about everything.
Right.
And it's not because I'm trying to make people think I'm swell. I just am talking about the thing of the day. But I realize in doing that, Jesus's words, you've had your reward. And so I would do a couple capers that you haven't told anybody about.
Yeah.
Just do it because it'd be awesome.
And I do think as a dad, knowing inside, knowing with confidence, I am a secret superhero. I think there's something about the perspective of just I'm going to live into that and my kids benefit from it. So that's where we've even said, I used to say, Dad, awesome. It's about, it's not about us being awesome. It's about having an awesome God. I used to say it that way. Now I'm actually, the best gift we can give our kids is to be secretly awesome, to be dad awesome.
Yeah, fully engaged. So what awesome looks like isn't rebuilding the Aswan Dam. It's giving a cup of water to somebody. It'll be the small stuff. Those will be the bookmarks that people have. If you take your family on this big, massive trip and you stay in the penthouse suite and you have the whatever, it's not a bad thing, but it's somehow in this economy that God set up that it would be the small things. It would be like setting up 3 paper clips and making something out of those that they'll remember.
So Sweet Maria, your wife, when did you start calling her Sweet Maria?
Yeah, I think ever since I've known her, she's just that. We're not trying to talk her into it.
Yeah.
She's just very clear on who she is and what she wants. We just made an addition here at the Oaks, and we have 2 fainting goats that are coming.
They're best.
Yeah, they're getting weaned. And if you've seen the fainting goats video, you make a loud noise and they just tip over.
They're gone.
But that's how Maria is around people. She just tips over. So she is just devoted to our family and to me and the kids and whoever they marry and whoever they make.
Well, hearing you speak about her, whether it's just the 2 of us in person or in your books, I think there's something to adding a label that adds life, that we can actually, over our kids, over our spouse, that the way you speak of, it's congruency the whole time. I know how you feel about Maria.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't that be a good way to do it? If you think of what Jesus did, he called people either brother or sister, or he came up with, or friend, or he gave him a nickname. Right? The Sons of Zebedee. I think they had just a couple too many falafels at dinner time. But the Sons of Thunder, he had like a nickname for people. So what if we have these nicknames for the people that we love?
It's amazing. What would Sweet Maria say about where you got it wrong in your fatherhood journey? Of course, we all make mistakes. We all stumble. But what would she say as far as this was maybe an area you didn't add enough intentionality?
Yeah, well, I didn't have a definition of enough, and I'm still refining that. So sometimes we get in our mind, you want to provide, which like a wave, there's a front side and a back side to that wave. Yeah. So the front side, which is great, you provide like, the food and the clothes and the housing and all that. But what your family really needs you to provide is you, like fully present. And so I was spending all this time away trying to provide for the family, but not realizing it wasn't really what they were needing. And so we didn't have the big apocalyptic moment where they said like, I'm out of here, or we're not talking to you anymore. But there was this sense when I pulled in one day into the driveway and there was a help wanted sign. And it wasn't because Marie needed help. She was saying like, dude, you need help. Like, so I was off in Uganda and Somalia and Iraq and all these places, but I wasn't actually present for my family. So I was helping everybody else with their needs, and I was overlooking the needs of the people that were close. And it's a story as old as time. Like that's what happens. So just to refocus and to say that idea of being a new creation, like new day, new Bob. So even with the people that I have the privilege of working with, we'll get together next year and we'll say what worked right and what didn't go the way. And we're going to implement this new thing where we just take on a rotating basis, somebody is just off. They can just go and do whatever they want. Everybody will just delight in knowing that somebody's off doing something fun. And so you get to cultivate those creative ideas, always like kind of keeping an ear to the tracks to see what are the particular needs. And you could do that as a awesome dad to just hover, kind of like that's the first thing God did over the earth. He just hover over each person in your family. Like, what does kid number one need that I could only uniquely provide them? Because if they need a ride, they could get Uber to provide that. Give them a ride. But to say, is there something else they uniquely need that only I could provide? And then hover over your spouse and hover over a couple friends for a moment and to just say, like, what do they uniquely need that only I could provide?
New day, new Bob. I think we can all, that's an invitation. We all can say that at any point. We can say new day, new Jeff. Like we have the opportunity to step in, but the hovering that you're mentioning of like, we have to pause. We don't just race into new Jeff. I need to hover and ask that question.
And sometimes it can be as simple as just bringing a cup of cider to somebody who's, just needs something warm and tasty. And other times I remember when Lindsay left for college, we're a pretty tight-knit family, and she left to Seattle Pacific. And so I dropped her off, and they tell the parents, now it's time for you to leave. Like, get out of here, and we're going to do this. Yep. But I really wasn't done hovering over Lindsay. I had an old seaplane, and so I went down. I took off, and I knew when Lindsay was going to get out of the orientation, whatever it was. And so I was doing circles over that building in the seaplane. And when I saw all the students walking out, I called Lindsay on the cell phone. And I said, how's it going, Lindsay? She said, well, great. And she says, where are you? I said, I'm a hovering parent. Look up.
A new definition of helicopter parents. We're a hovering seaplane dad.
I was just doing 360s over this place. And she had a laugh about that, a little mortified. And also she just thought, the last day of college, I just showed up at her door and I walked her to class because we'd done that 4 years together. And I flew up to Seattle and we had coffee once a week for 4 years. I started practicing law in Seattle so I could see my daughter once a week. And so I know that it's not extravagant. I just bought plane tickets like the next guy, but I found something I could do that would get me in the blast radius of my kids.
Yes.
Instead of letting efficiency call all the shots, but to set like presence, to actually be there. And I'm a lawyer. You can be a lawyer in Seattle. You just take this thing called the bar exam. And it just sounded like a great idea. Now, some people would say that's extravagant. That was like the smartest thing I could ever do is just get anywhere near them, be like, awesome.
A career pivot that put you in proximity weekly. I love that. I actually, part of the reason we bought an RV and we're on the road is I said I don't want to lead a fatherhood organization that tells dads to stay home with your kids while I fly away from my kids to tell them that.
Yeah.
So we're living in an RV for that reason in this season.
Isn't that crazy? And you'll never look back and say, we just like spend too much time. But to just know that you're just putting in this deck of images for your kids. Some of your kids are young enough that they'll only remember what your other kids told them about this time.
Yeah, the stories.
But the fact that they'll be able to do that, to say, this is how we roll.
Yeah. Well, my oldest daughter, Kiva, she's on her second read through Love Does for Kids that you wrote with your daughter, Lindsay. And your opening story, you mentioned the wake up fairy, that you had the honor to be the wake up fairy, to wake up the kids. I think when they were napping, right? They were all napping. And you actually failed. It was a stumble. You stepped on someone's nose while you were running around the room.
Yeah. So I got my wings. I was so happy. You get a wand, a wing. It was really pretty progressive, in the 1960s.
That's amazing.
When you think about it.
Wand and wings, running around and tapping kids
tapping
up.
people until I stepped on somebody's face, and they just unceremoniously stripped me of my wings, and I was out of a job. And so that's going to happen, though, that you'll make even as a dad. You'll say, oh, this is going to be awesome. And then it just doesn't turn out awesome. It just ends up being like, oh, wow. Could be one of those cars, boats, trains, and planes as you're stuck in Iowa.
Fully.
Sorting out whatever. But remember when we traveled with the kids, we used to have them, when we land in a country, have them, even at the age, maybe just a year or two older than yours, have them change the currency and to figure out how to get us wherever we're going, to say like, hey, we're with you. Like, just tell us, where you go. What should we do next? It was really fun. It wasn't a dare. It wasn't a big teachable moment. Yet it ended up making kids who are very daring and filled with teachable moments.
Well, and that question, what should we do next, is a question that I want to ask you right now. I want to ask you to be a wake-up fairy for us dads, for Dad Awesome. I want you to wake us up, and that might actually mean stepping on some of our noses, so being a little rough with us. But I just want to invite you, Bob, what would you say to the dad listening right now that says, where do I go from here? And says, I even invite you to talk real directly and step on my nose as a wake-up fairy. Would you wake me up and wake the dads up with even a challenge right now to say, put more attention here, put more focus here, stop doing this? How would you challenge us?
Yeah, quit your job. Like, literally, that's it. I would say 9 out of 10 of the people I know, male and female, are in jobs that were great on the day they got them, but they've changed. New day, new you. And
you're still there.
You've changed and the job didn't. And so I would just say, just quit. What if every 7th year there was a rule that everybody just quit their jobs and they just started afresh? Then we would get acclimated to that. I'd start actually kind of looking forward to that. To say, what if you do that? And so somebody say, well, that's so disruptive and inefficient and all that. Maybe, but there was a guy I know that was a great dad, but he was just in a job that didn't fit him anymore. He was a brain surgeon, of all things, a pediatric brain surgeon. Can you imagine, like, all the training? But he didn't want to do that. He wanted to write kids' books. And so he came to one of these gatherings, and we had the quit your job conversation. And because he's just a really awesome, faithful, dedicated guy, he walked in with his partners and he quit. He moved to Hawaii, and with his family, they rented a little place. And he realized later, and he let me share this, that he didn't realize he was within a thread of being done with his marriage. His wife let him know, like, dude, you just have been miserable. And he said, I came here to write kids' books, but what I did is I got reconnected with my family. And when he got reconnected with his family, all of a sudden he liked what he knew how to do, which is pediatric brain surgery. And he started this outfit in Hawaii for pediatric brain works. Isn't that crazy? And so what he did is it wasn't his job that he didn't like. It was this, he just lost touch with his family, but he didn't realize that. And then when he did a bold move to awaken and move towards something that he thought it happened to be kids' books, That's what we connected around. That he found out, no, he actually really loves what he does. He just needed to reconnect with his family. And when he got that right, then everything started falling into place.
So your bold, step on the nose type wake up fairy statement is quit your job.
Yeah.
And you told me to do this through one of your books. You challenged all of us with Dream Big to consider quitting your job because, again, the context that I was making a decision of my job, I was exactly 7 years into my last job. And a year and a half ago, I quit my job. You were my first call the next day, and you encouraged me. You celebrated with me over the phone. It was a quick 2-minute call. I used the number from the back of your book, gave you a call. And what I have seen is exactly what you're talking about, is by quitting my job and stepping into what's right for my family today, not what was right for my family 7 years ago, it was a game changer for the Zog family.
There's something about that if sometimes we wait for, just all the right things to line up before we make a move. What about make the move and then say, okay, so this is the fixed point. What needs to change?
Yeah.
And you're going to figure it out. All the things that made you successful in the previous job will make you successful in the next thing. I walked into my own law firm, got everybody together in the 17th floor of the Washington Mutual Tower, and I quit my own law firm. I took the key off the ring. I gave it to a guy, said, it's all yours. You don't owe me anything. He's like, are you kidding me? Now, that was a stupid economic move, but it was an awesome new creation move. And I think that's what we want to do. Start making some really neat new creation to actually live in. It isn't just something to needle point into a pillow to say your new creation with a Bible verse. Why not actually live? Like, see yourself in the mirror as like, what is Bob possible? Yeah. Like, what could he do? I'm going to till a field today. That's probably not the highest and best economic use of several days today, but it's the best way I could spend today to get ready for what lies ahead, to just say, like, the accomplishment that comes of doing that. And I've got cows I'm trying to take care of. And I'm just interested in more and different things. And I think it makes me a better husband, a better dad, hopefully a better leader. Then I'm just like upending things.
Hey guys, just taking a quick break away from my conversation with Bob Goff to tell you about a new resource that Dad Awesome has created. There are 4 videos. They're short. They're gonna take you about 5 minutes to watch, and it's called Adding Life to the Dad Life. We've created a 4-part framework for intentional fatherhood. We're like, man, we wanna be dads who add life. We've taken 200 episodes of the podcast and taken it down into these 4 videos. I wanna send them to you, 1 per day for the next 4 days. All you have to do is sign up at dadawesome.org/life. LIFE stands for I am loved, I am intentional, I am free, and I enjoy my kids. We're gonna talk about these 4 themes. It is the Dad Awesome framework, and I wanna send it to you for free. Just sign up at dadawesome.org/life. I know that we both Jeep Wranglers have been for 7 years. It was my vehicle. I know you had it for a while. You have a Jeep here now. You challenged me last time I was here to think about downshifting the career focus, because this is a window of time. Downshift that focus. I remember when I would take it to the car wash, my Jeep, the only vehicle they would make the driver get out was a Wrangler. Any other vehicle you could sit in the car, go through, but something about the way the engine is, the torque is, they actually had some injuries because the Jeep will lurch forward if it jumps into gear. I don't know if you know about this at all.
No,
but the
that's
Jeep,
awesome.
of all vehicles, Jeeps are the torque, the way the gearbox, it's dangerous to actually have someone in the vehicle in a car wash. So what I wanted to ask you about is the posture for dads. I think there is a play it safe, a culture of I have to protect, there are fears of, man, I can't be out of control because I have all these little lives depending on me. I have my spouse depending on me. And we were getting after it a little bit the last question, but this lean forward posture, be bold, take action versus being controlled, like controlling the risk and saying, I'm going to let fear chart my course. How can we be Jeep Wrangler dads who have a disposition towards action and being bold?
Yeah, maybe constantly saying what's possible, not what's familiar. But sometimes the familiar will get in the way of what's actually possible. When the vid shut everything down in California, this camp that we're sitting at right now was empty. And so I saw there was a great big field next door, and I planted a vineyard. Now, I don't drink wine. I'm all for it. Like, I want to, ferment it and crush it up and put labels and corks in it and all that. I just don't care for the taste. I'm a Dr. Pepper guy. But I did the math, and it takes 3 years to get a good grape. And then you put that evidently in a barrel for 3 more years to do whatever it does. And then you drink the wine. And I'm 62. And I did the math. I'm like 63, 64, 65, 66. And I'm like, I need to get going. So maybe seeing a timeline, we're right back to the idea of context for your life, to see you have just this little bit of time with your kids where they're just like, you could go do anything. I could take my boys to a turd farm and they'd be like, really?
Fascinating.
They'd be like, awesome. So when you have their attention, just like do something with that, and don't wait until they leave. It's almost like change your ringtone to, Cats in the Cradle, that.
Yeah.
So to realize, wow, I'm going to replicate the kind of grandfather you want to be will be a byproduct of the kind of dad that you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, like, I don't know, tell me what you see in your future. If it's you sitting alone in a golf cart, playing golf, then awesome. Ignore your family. Yeah. But if you want to be just around everybody and chaos and wonderful, go for it. And your nickname you want to give yourself is Opa.
Yes,
like there's just something there. My kids, even now, when the grandkids come over, we have lots of those iceberg roses. They're just like tons and tons of these. And every time before they leave, I pretend I'm going to sneeze and I have a handful of rose petals. Yes. I go, achoo, and the rose petals come out. Ever since this little 2.5-year-old, almost 3, has been over to the house, he always leaves with rose petals on the window. And I'm telling you, when I am spending my last days here, I'm going to put rose petals on that kid's window. Like to just say, like, I just want them to celebrate. They'll see this and they'll remember. They call it in their faith traditions the aroma of Christ. Yeah. But it's just this memory. It's like why a pillow smells like the one you love. Why like the clothing kind of just smells or looks. You see a Hawaiian shirt and you remember that friend that always wore a Kahala Hawaiian shirt.
Yes, amazing. Well, I wanted to end our time with my last question is around what you've learned from your friends at San Quentin State Prison. I know that they've changed your life, those friends. The class you taught has led to deep friendships. And what do you think you've learned from those amazing men that would apply to each of us dads?
Yeah, well, 2 things. I was up there last week and we were filming this little documentary because the warden's a great guy. And he said, you can film this documentary in the prisoners. It's their documentary, not mine. And so they said, will you come a little early and we'll do some filming? So we're at this one corner of San Quentin and we're getting ready to film. There's 1,100 guards that keep all of them there. They take shifts, but there's quite a few guards. And on the other side of the wall, while we're getting ready to film this thing, they are having target practice. And these targets do not look like pheasants and squirrels and all that. They are outlines of them. These guards are practicing shooting them. And so it was just so kind of sobering to realize as we're trying to film and wait for the volley of bullets to stop. Now, they weren't coming through the wall, but to just know 20 feet that side, there's people practicing to take you out. And I would say, not to add unnecessary drama, that like the world wants to take you out. Like there's our forces of darkness and distraction. And I don't see the devil around every corner, but that's what they're aiming for. They don't have silhouettes of little pheasants and things. They have a silhouette that looks like you. And so it was a great conversation we had with these men. There's one guy in particular, I won't give you his name because he'd probably get in trouble, but he has a problem that he's identified. And his problem is this: he doesn't like prison food. But the problem is he's in for life. So that's what's available is prison food. But he nevertheless didn't find himself constrained by what was merely available. He decided to innovate. And so you can actually hot wire a little hot plate that you use to warm your coffee and make it as hot, like unlimited degrees. Now you burn off a 1/2 inch of wire every time you use it because it just gets so hot. But I was asking, he had quesadillas, the day before, and burritos the day before that. He makes them in his cell. His cell is 6 feet wide, 7.5 feet long, and there are 2 guys in there that weigh 240 each, a bunk bed, a toilet, a sink, and everything they own. And this guy they use his name and they call him the chef. And so he just cooks up. I asked him, what's the coolest thing you've ever made? Yeah. And he said, a cheesecake. I'm like, you made a cheesecake.
It's 6x6.
So I said, will you write out the recipe card for me? I got to remember how to do this. The first thing you do is you need to get this one guy that's in the mess hall to steal 5 cinnamon buns for you.
That's a step one.
And in exchange for a slice of that cheesecake, he'll give you a cup of sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon as well. You mix these together, you tear it apart with your hands. There's no utensils because you'll shank somebody. And so you mix them together, then you need butter. Well, he just gets all of his guys to take that little rectangle of butter on their bit. And then all together, he's got 30 guys taking their butter in, and they meet him in his cell because he's drawn community around this. They don't want a piece of his cake. They just love the fact that he's making stuff himself. The last thing he needs for cheesecake, 2 cups of cream cheese. Well, there's a religious tradition within San Quentin that gets bagels and cream cheese. And so he just gets 18 of those little cream cheese shooters. It equals 2 cups. And so he pays $1 for every 5 of those. And the last thing you need is to chill it. And so he gets the prisoners to 5 cubes of ice each, about a handful of ice each. They come into his cell and they drop off this, and he chills his cheesecake. And there's something beautiful that everybody doesn't get a slice, but everybody's fed. There's something really beautiful. I think we can do that as you continue with this work you're doing with Dad Awesome, that everybody gets fed somehow. They get what they need, but you got to know what you want, and you got to overcome what's just merely available and get your head on a swivel and say, what could I do to influence what I want? He found a guy that works in the mess hall, and he got just a little bit of what he needs. He hot-wired whatever he needed to do to make it happen. And I'm sure he's going to be not eating prison food again today.
Yeah. Bob, you have deposited courage in me. Through your books, through our conversations, through this conversation, you've encouraged me to go after it. And you've encouraged all of us dads to be dads who go after it. And I just want to thank you. The deposit you've put in me has been a part of what's launched this ministry. And I was just hoping you could end our time with praying over all of us that we would be dads who live on our toes versus our heels, that we would be all in, let's take the leap type dads, and that we would keep a perspective of God's up to bigger things than we're even aware of.
Yeah, Will. Jesus, you've been eavesdropping on this conversation. You've been eavesdropping on our entire lives, and give the men and women listening like the grit and the guts to just not agree with anything that's been said, but to actually do something about it. Know that the only thing that matters is faith expressed in love. In your strong name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 214 with Bob Goff. All the conversation notes are going to be both in your podcast player or right below on YouTube, or at dadawesome.org/214, 214. So dadawesome.org/214. Also want to remind you guys, last week on episode 213, I kind of laid out this framework called the Intentional 40. These 40 new experiences, 10 with my wife, 10 with my daughters, one-on-ones with my daughters, 10 with friends, and 10 with mentors. And want to invite you, if you missed that, you can go back and listen to last week's episode. But if you want more information on the Intentional 40, go to dadawesome.org/intentional. dadawesome.org/intentional. Thanks again for joining us this week. Let's go add some life to the dad life.